Hey everyone, today we're looking through the strangest nerfs in Dead by Daylight history. These are things that just left me confused when they happened. They aren't all directly bad, it's a combination of being stunned, being unhappy, and just kind of being generally confused by the decision. There's a range of things in here, so I'm interested to see what you will think. First off, let's talk about the Freddy rework nerf. This is the nerf he received after his original rework, where he went from strong and boring to weak and boring. At one point, Freddy was maybe the strongest character in the game. In fact, in the first ever tier list I made, he was at the very top of it. By the next one, he was in the bottom 5, I think. The main resulting changes just completely removed everything that made him good, which is an option, I guess, but it took a character that people only really played for his strength, and instead made him into a character that no one played. His slowdown add-ons were completely removed from the game, replaced with these really bizarre add-ons that would do things like increase footstep sounds, or grunts of pain when in the dream world. His main ability, his snares, were also nerfed completely, lowered from 8 to 5 in number, and having his speed whilst placing them reduced to 4 meters per second, with clocks further being buffed for survivors. This nerf I find strange, because I wonder why it was decided to go the route of just destroying his kit, instead of reworking the things that weren't fun. Freddy has had a strange trajectory over the years, and I hope one day he can be reworked again and get a good balance between fun and strength. This one may be a bit of a controversial pick, but I think the key and hatch nerf was a really odd choice to make, mainly because now keys are now very near to useless, I find. You literally never see them, maybe even less so than maps now. Keys were once a tool that could change a game completely, and yeah, that was too strong, undoubtedly, but their reduction to a second chance, whilst only having one survivor remaining, and now having an animation too, is so incredibly small in application. Since the rework, I have not seen a singular person escape a trial with a key, which I feel shouldn't be the case if the rework had been a balanced one. This is in part due to how the hatch was also nerfed. The hatch nerf is something I agree with more. Before, the hatch would spawn closed whenever at least 3 gens had been completed, and if 2 people were alive. If 3 were alive, you needed to complete 4 generators before it spawned, and if 1 was alive, the hatch would spawn opened, like it does now. The closed hatch would also used to spawn once all generators had been completed, regardless of survivors remaining. This would cause lots of annoying situations where 4 survivors could all exit through the hatch, ignoring the exit gates completely, so long as there was a key in the game, and they could do so without an animation of any kind. My main issue with this, and the reason I find the changes so strange, is that they were gutted completely. The hatch is mostly fine, I think, but keys feel absolutely worthless now, and again, I literally never see them anymore. Of course, we have to mention the hillbilly overheat nerf. This was maybe one of the most complained about nerfs that we've ever had, and similar to the Freddy nerf, made Billy just very weak, and quite an unpopular pick. This rework basically just made Billy's chainsaw able to overheat, after prior not overheating at all, with you able to use it as much as you like. The main thing I find strange about this nerf is that they took a character who was a lot of fun, had a lot of techs and such, a lot like the current version of Blight, and decided to remove it all in favour of a far more restrictive power that had very little versatility, and forced you to play in a far more set way. It killed a lot of creativity that had been made with him. On top of that, he received a bunch of add-on reworks, similar to the Freddy ones, which were just extremely strange. This one is going to be really weird, and lots of people probably don't even care, but this is a lore nerf. At some point, I think a couple years ago at this point, there were quotes that featured on the characters from Benedict Baker, up to the Shattered Bloodline DLC. These quotes would be from Benedict, and reference his perspective on the character from within the realm. They were these really cool quotes that kind of summarized the characters really nicely, and did so in a bit more of a spicy, interesting way, over their longer lore tabs. It also felt a lot more immersive. However, However, they aren't viewable in-game anymore, and they don't release anywhere with the promotional material or anything. It's a shame because it was a unique addition for each chapter. My personal theory is that these would have continued, but were concluded once the archives began production, with them releasing around a year after the Benedict quote stopped appearing. The Observer served a very similar role to Benedict Baker, but was instead introduced more blatantly as a proper character and the lore guide to Dead by Daylight. It's still a strange thing though, as these quotes could have been kept in the game, or at the very least just retconned to now be said by the Observer, instead of them just falling into the lore void. This lore nerf can also be extended further to other parts of the game, such as character lore tabs, which were altered or changed, and sometimes just shortened, with large parts of text removed. All of it is viewable on the wiki, which is nice, but it's a shame we lost it, as some of it is really cool. And again, it's annoying because it kind of puts into question what is and what isn't canon. Next, I want to talk about the twins nerf. Which one? Literally all of them. And it's largely strange to me that these happen, because they are so horrendously underplayed, that the idea of ever nerfing them seems unbelievable, when characters like Blight still exists, with his add-on set. One of the more recent and significant twins nerfs was in January 2022, when they received a nerf to pretty much all of their good add-ons: Madeline's Scarf, Toy Sword, and Stale Biscuit. These felt very unnecessary. I really hope they get a good rework, whenever that ends up releasing. The flashlight nerf when it first came out is maybe the one that confused me the most. I miss the feeling of old flashlights a lot. This one isn't really even a gameplay related one, with flashlights largely fulfilling the same goal. Before, flashlights would be able to be spam clicked, and the sound was also slightly different. When the change was made, the way flashlights handled felt very awkward, and it always felt like there was input lag when you clicked the flashlight, making the timing on saves a lot harder, and just generally feel quite awkward. Before, I would frequently aim the flashlight, then re-click it to adjust the aim of the beam, which is something you just can't do now, meaning you have to commit once you've clicked, which can be quite frustrating. Of all things in the game, flashlights did not need a nerf. The spacing between spam clicking being made larger is fine, I think, as it could be annoying before, but the new spacing feels a bit too extreme. Flashlights are an item that kind of made DBD how it is, and the old ones always gave the game a certain feel, which the new ones just don't really do that well. There seem to have been some small changes made to iron these things out, but the release version of these altered flashlights felt really bad. Next, I want to discuss Deathslinger's Terror Radius nerf. One of the most significant Terror Radius changes is for the Deathslinger, who was nerfed considerably when his Terror Radius was changed from 24 meters to 32 meters. It used to be near perfect, where you were able to pin a shot from just outside of your terror radius without survivors hearing, with the Redeemer able to fire 18 meters. With this change, you can barely get stealth shots anymore, and due to the reduced 4.4 meters per second movement speed, it's even tougher. This was also paired with his ADS nerf, which was kind of a double whammy. A bit like Billy's situation, it just killed an aspect of gameplay for him, with little recourse. The next one I want to cover is something that is purely just weird, and I want to mention it in some form. This is the Plague nerf to Breakable Walls. Prior to 5.1.0, the Plague could infect breakable walls. This was an effect that did nothing at all, as there is no way for a survivor to actually interact with a breakable wall. Only the killer can break it to open a pathway. So yeah, that's it. They removed her ability to infect breakable walls, which is technically a nerf, as it removes an ability of hers. Very strange. A more recent survivor change that is just really dull is the 90-second generators. Before patch 6.1.0, generators would take 80 seconds to fully complete alone, with an additional 10 seconds being added in order to slow matches down. This is a really strange change, and I think the idea behind it was to try and get killer players to use less slowdown perks, but I think all it's really done is encouraged generators to be hard focused, and now with killers having a far larger number of slowdown perks, which were also buffed in the same patch, generators can typically feel quite long to repair, with the extra time plus all the slowdowns. Sitting alone on a gen is an even less pleasant experience than it used to be. This is another case it feels of kind of fast patching an issue and hoping to come back to solve it later on, instead of addressing it at the core and solving it, as I think this change by and large has just made generators an even more boring aspect of gameplay than they were before. Patch 6.1.0 overall was an awesome patch, but I think this significant addition of gen speeds was a bit of a miss, and a strange choice when paired with all of the new more powerful slowdown perks. Another one I want to cover finally, that I remember just being incredibly bizarre, was the HUD nerf. This is another non-direct nerf, but I'm gonna consider it one, because it made playing the game very awkward. This was in early 2021, and maybe the worst period of the game in its entire history, having multiple poor chapter releases, which felt very buggy. There was then changes to survivor movement, and of course the HUD changes, where the icons were moved everywhere. I think due to the time this was released, it had likely been disrupted quite a lot, which I think makes it a lot more understandable. The current HUD is fine, but that initial change was just the strangest decision ever, I think. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and let me know if you think there's anything I missed that belongs on this list. Thanks, and goodbye.